Don't go outside. There's something happening worldwide. Mom, cover up. This virus does not discriminate. People do.
Stop Asian Hate is an anti-Asian violence rally that started in March 2021 in the US, and is fighting over racism against Asian Americans related to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was reported in Wuhan, China. And this increased the amount of racism against Asians and Asian Americans, and it is reported that over 10,370 hate incidents happened in the US over the past year. Some of the types of discrimination they got were verbal harassment 62.9%, and shunning, which is deliberate avoidance of Asian Americans 16.3%, and physical assault 16.1%, and online harassment 8.6%, and civil rights violation like workplace discrimination, refusal of service, being barred from transportation, and housing-related discrimination accounts for 11.3% of the total incidents. Some of the insults they got were go back to your country, take the virus with you, get out of the store, another Asian riding with me today, I hope you don't have any COVID, and you bring the virus here and you dare ask the people to keep the social distance guidelines. One of the most tragic crimes over Asian hate happened in March 2021 at the 3 spots in the Atlanta metropolitan area where a mass shooting occurred.
When the Asian community is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When the Asian community is under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
What do we do?
And among the 8 people killed, 6 were Asian women, and it took place in a place with high percentage of Asian staff members, and the shooter said that he committed those murders because of a conflict between his sex addiction and religious belief. In a recent crime that happened just a few days ago, an 18-year-old Asian American student was brutally attacked by 4 13 to 17 years old black female teens on a subway in Philadelphia.
We're black! We're black! You got something, you get jump back!
No, it was really heavy.
Stop fucking Dickie! Drop the earphones! What, bitch? Stop fucking Dickie! Watch out, watch out, watch out!
And they did so because the victim, the girl, stopped them from yelling at 3 Asian teenage boys. Another case that happened in California that also happened recently in the US. In US girls youth basketball game involving the daughter of a former NBA player, Asian American female student was attacked by the opponent, causing a bruised neck and concussion. And during the game, the mother of the black student told her, "You gotta hit her for it," just because they bumped into each other. With the increasing hate crimes on Asians and Asian Americans, some celebrities have made a move to stop Asian hate.
But in terms of like getting people to stop violently attacking Asian Americans, that's an issue that's not coming from our community. That's an issue from the outside, and they need to deal with that.
And unfortunately, all the warning signs, they kind of went unnoticed. They kind of landed on deaf ears, and it's taken such an incredibly tragic and horrific event for this to really hit international and national news in a really targeted way. And so it's really heartbreaking, and I wish that this could have been done in better situations, but this is where we are right now.
You work in Korea as well, around the world. I mean, you're pretty big in the K-pop world. What's been the reaction in Asia to what's been happening to Asians in America?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not there at the moment, so it's hard for me to really get a pulse of what people are feeling, what the sentiment is. What I do think is a general kind of consensus of what a lot of people are feeling is fear and a hesitancy to think of America in the most positive way for obvious reasons. I think when people say, I'm going to go study in the States, or I'm going to go visit the States, for years it's kind of been this thing of, are you sure it's a little unsafe?
So we just discussed about the case that in which 6 Asian women are killed by a white man with his guns. And during a press conference about the case, the police repeated the shooter's own narrative of his alleged sex addiction without questioning the rampant hypersexualization of Asian women throughout US history and in American culture and media. So what does that mean? In this paragraph, actually it refers to two different things. One is like the hypersexualization of Asian women throughout US history. This relates to the historical period after the slavery was formally abolished in the United States. At that time, America brought thousands of Chinese people to its country to work in industries such as railroads, sugar plantations, and mining. The first immigration law of America, the Page Act of 1875, actually excluded East Asian women from the country because of stereotypes that they were sex workers and temptations for white men, making the immigration illegal and barring existing Chinese American women from becoming citizens. And in 1882, the US government also excluded Chinese men, and which means all of Chinese people are not considered as a citizen in America. Those laws were not repealed until 1943. So in this kind of like 60 years, none of the Chinese people are treated as citizens. Well, so I think this is the very origin of Asian hate, and they not really treat Asian people as one of them, but as a replacement of slavery, and they just work for them in a very low price. Actually, I don't think whether there's a price or not, I don't know. Some of the thoughts of that time hasn't been abandoned. Actually, it passes generations, and then it still exists in some current America. So after discussing the hypersexualization of Asian women, and then what is the male figures in American culture and media be treated like, we can generate somehow a conclusion from several TV shows and movies. Let's start with this not really well-known TV series called Selfie. The main character of this TV series is the first Asian American leading man in a role sitcom, but it got cut off. And what is the reason? Of course, it's because of its low rating. The average rating of this TV series is only about 1%. But personally, I have seen this TV series myself, and as a film student, I think the structure is quite well done. The plot is not that bad. And also, I have to mention that it got 7.2 points on IMDb. So why this film got such a low rating? I think we can explain that through different aspects. At that time in 2013, 30% of Americans doesn't approve interracial marriage. The second reason of having a low rating is because in the previous time, the positions of Asian males in TV series and films are restricted into 6 different types, and these are the 6 different types provided by Vulture. To most audience, they are more likely to accept an Asian character as a sidekick. And purpose of having Asian characters is like to add some cultural diversities into the TV shows. So when an Asian character seems to be sexually attractive in a TV series, most audience cannot really accept this kind of image because it's really different from what they are thinking. And even nowadays, we can still see this stereotypical Asian male character image in a recent movie, and it is called Shang-Chi. In most Marvel superhero films, the male leading character is always having a female partner, and they will have a romance relationship. Iron Man got Pepper, and Captain America got Carter, and Hulk, in the very original film of Hulk in 2003, she had a girlfriend called Betty. And for Ant-Man, he got hope. And even for Star-Lord, who is more likely to be a funny character, he got Gamora as his female partner. And what about Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi had no romantic relationship with any female figure in the whole film. He is a pure friend toward Kate, and that's it. So many critics in mainland China, they're speaking of the Marvel is choosing two not good-looking character as the leading character in this film, and that's why they hate it. For me personally speaking, I don't want to judge about the lookings of the actors, but what confuses me is like, despite all the Asian elements and the Chinese elements and Chinese dialogue in this film, the very original problem is not solved. Shang-Chi, this Asian male character, is still having a sexual image in this film. If this hasn't been changed, then nothing has been changed. So why it has been so hard to change the stereotype of Asian Americans, sort of say, Asian people? I think the political issues should be involved in the discussion if we want to figure this out. Since Donald Trump became the president of United States, he kept spreading hatred on immigrants. According to a research, in 2019, Americans' concern with immigration continues to be heightened. 20% of Americans mention immigration as the most important problem. It has been the highest since 1993. Besides, there have been at least 54 criminal cases to immigrants that are related to Trump. Throughout American history, there are 10 main charges against immigrants. First, they bring crime, then they import poverty, they spread disease, they don't assimilate, they corrupt our politics, they steal our jobs. The other here represent the, and Trump has made every one of these charges. No American president before him has publicly embraced the entire nativist worldview. I think this is the main problem, that not only Asian American but also other American immigrants are not accepted by the whole society completely, because some of the Americans, including Trump, they believe that the immigrants are not able to be true Americans. After all effort they put in to make this happen, what are the true Americans? How do you define a true American? If immigrants are able to contribute to the society and they are trying to getting involved in the community and trying to be friends with their neighbors, why they cannot be the true Americans? What if I choose to have a further study in America, then decide to immigrate there and become an American citizen, and I used what I've learned in schools and universities to contribute to the society, and I pay taxes and I buy American local stuff, and I also help the neighbors and try to serve the community, that am I able to be considered as a true American? Or I can never be a true American because my skin color. So that is a basic issue that I'm confused with. Since most of the Asian immigrants have been benefiting the American society a lot, on October 5th, 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed a law that designated the first 7 days of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week to acknowledge Americans' first Japanese immigrants and the Chinese immigrants who helped build the railroads. That means the government is acknowledged of the effort that Asian immigrants made to develop America. And not only as cheap workers, Asian people also benefit American in other different ways, such as there are Asian modern artistics, and there are Asian doctors, and there are Asian website finder, and Asian people also spread a lot of martial art, which is quite popular in America now. And also clothes designers from Asia. From the charts over here, we can see that most of the Asian immigrants are well educated, and they're young, and they speak English as their mother tongue. And most of them have a decent job at school or hospitals, but still they are not treated equally. However, these people over here, they are losing their jobs. Since the 2020, Asians have lost 39% of their jobs in 9 different sectors. It has been a tough year for Asian people, not only in America, but also in the whole world. Since 2020 in Italy, the civil society group has collected an anonymous reports and media accounts of assaults, verbal harassment, bullying, and discrimination against people of Asia. The government of the Veneto told journalists in February of 2020 that the country would be better than China in handling virus due to Italy's culturally strong attention to hygiene, washing hands, taking showers, whereas we have all seen that Chinese eating mice alive. Well, I had pizza for dinner. In the UK, Asian people have been punched in face and taunted, accused of spreading coronavirus. And also in Russia, after they banned Chinese citizens from entering the country, the state-owned transport company Moscow Trans has begun to order drivers of public transport in Moscow to report Chinese passengers to the police. Policemen in Russia should be busy, right? I mean, do they even have time to? And in Australia, in March of 2020, there are cases in which death to dog eaters was painted in front of an Asian man's house and of people screaming racist abuse at 2 sisters, calling them Asian dogs, who brought coronavirus here and dumb horse. Just imagine if your family are actually being called dumb horse and Asian dogs, and dogs, and you don't have to be Asian. Imagine this situation happens. What will you say? Especially they're just normal people that actually have nothing to do with the spreading of this virus. So finally, I would like to share a little bit of my personal experience. I'm not actually hated by any people, by the way. Perhaps there will be people hating me, but I'm not acknowledged of. Currently, I'm in Hong Kong and I'm studying in Hong Kong, but I do have relatives living in not only America but also Canada and other countries, and I don't know whether they are suffering from this kind of issues. Think about it. If some people actually call you a dumb whore or Asian dog, will you actually say to your family?
Racism is a worldwide issue that many people are trying to solve. The major racism we hear about today is against the black people in America, and there are news reports on crime on black people and interviews of them being terrified of discrimination. But along with that, Asian hate was always there with the other discriminations, and many people around the world are discriminating against Asians and Asian Americans. And it is known that this intensified after the pandemic, but we all know that it could not be globally discussed because of the unequal national power between the US and the Asian countries. So people, for example, the black people, need to think about if they are also discriminating against the others based on their stereotypes or their race before saying we are being discriminated by our race.
Just stop Asian hate.